Yeah, this is fine. So if I have to go back to the
You will have to present.
escape,
Yeah, escape.
then
Yeah, this is the other file.
this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess this is the 2 and this is the first one.
How would we go? This one is it?
This one is first.
For 4, yeah.
Oh, this is 2.
No, 2.
It's control F.
Okay. My name is Prakash Nama. I represent Global IP Services. Actually, my topic is more in patent prosecution, different from the previous speakers. I'm not sure how I was put into this forum, but I hope you like. I'm going to keep my presentation short because I know it's the end of the day. Basically, we are a US law firm having an India LPO operation. We focus on harvesting India-originated inventions. And naturally, India is doing a lot of work in the software area. And most of the innovations that's happening in India is in the high technology area, is in the software. So we specialize in that specific area. And so I thought I'd present something from the software patents perspective. What are the issues? What one should be aware of, and what strategies should be used. So in light of that, I'm going to be presenting. And you can stop me anytime and ask questions. We don't have to wait till the end of the presentation, just to make it more interactive. So just to make my point, I just want to it's not coming up. Excuse me, I'm just going back from one presentation to another.
This is your first presentation. This is 2.
That's what I did.
So both the presentation.
It's not coming up.
Next. Is this the table of contents?
But I want to go to the other one. No, the second one.
These are the need for some.
I wanted to go to the second. I had 2 different presentations. Basically, the second one, I was just going to show that both in India as well as everywhere else, the number of inventions coming out of software is increasing every year. It's almost exponential in nature. India alone probably started with 10 years ago with just few inventions. Today, literally, probably 10,000 or so inventions come out of software area. So I just wanted to make that point. And also there was another slide where I was going to talk about how software itself is very unsettled as patent law. It's evolving, and US is at one extreme and Europe is another extreme. And everybody else falls in between as far as prosecuting and granting patents. US is probably the most liberal, and Europe is probably more on the other side of it. And I'll go through that. And why that is so important is because the nature of the software inventions will dictate which jurisdiction you want to use to get a patent. Otherwise, one can spend a lot of money in going into jurisdictions where they will not get their patents. That's not the case in other technology areas, whereas in the software, it's very much true even today. So basically, software is basically a bunch of code. You either use it in embedded devices or any kind of devices to make it do something, as you are aware. So I'm just not going to go through all these basics which you already know, what a patent is, what patent is required. I'm just going to quickly go into computer implemented inventions and how they affect from the perspective of getting a patent granted. And that's probably of more interest. So I'm going to skip some of these slides. So as far as, let me get to that slide. The subject matter, I'm just going to go, okay. Okay. So the two jurisdictions, I keep talking about Europe and the US, all the other jurisdictions like China, India, Japan, all of them fall in between. Europe uses what's called technical effect. There has to be, for the innovation, there has to be something called technical. This word technical is not well defined. There's a lot of discussion on it. But just to give you an example, let's say you come up with a software that improves the resolution on a screen, TV screen, or an LCD monitor. That change on a physical thing is technical. Whereas US uses what's called a physical transformation, or anything, as long as your software is tied to a computer or some machine. So two different tests are used. So because there are two different tests, it's much more easier to get patents in US, like even business methods. As long as you can show that it's tied to some machine or a computer, and you need that machine to do something, you can get a patent. Whereas in Europe, you have to show the technical effect, that your software does something physical, which is a very hard test. And under Europe, Europe does not grant any business methods. So that's the difference I wanted to make. And India follows Europe as far as granting software patents. Whereas China, Japan, they fall in between. It could go either way. So with that in mind, what we do is we advise our clients, based on the nature of the invention, which jurisdiction they should go, what kind of protection they need, how much they would like to spend. If one doesn't use that strategy, they could go and spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and they'll be wasting not only money-wise, but they'll not be able to get patents. We have several business method patents in Europe. We have not been able to get granted. But the same ones that are rejected in Europe is granted in US, and some are granted in India. So that knowledge is helpful very early on to decide which way one has to go in acquiring these patents. So that basically was my presentation. So just to make a point on how software patents have to be looked at and how one has to strategize it to get a patent. And I just wanted to make that point across and get that. And if you have any questions, so if you want to go more into detail, I can answer that. Yeah, please.
I have one question. You are part of a U.S. company, you said. When you're drafting your cases, do you draft them Indian style, or do you draft your claims?
That's a good question. Basically,
European style.
yes. That's basically depends on. Excuse me. Thank you. Basically depends on if the client decides to file only in US. Then we focus more towards what would work in a US patent office. Basically, it depends on, like, for example, business methods. We know it's not going to get granted in Europe, so we are going to focus more on that. But if it is more of a physical nature where, you have machines where a software is going to change something, then we would actually draft more towards what Europe would look for, because in US we know it will get granted. So it will be more to meet the European requirement. So we know the same application we can take with a minor change and file it in US, and we can get it granted.
Okay. But would you draft it in one style? I had similar questions with people in a pharmaceutical area where actually the type of claims would be extremely different from territory to territory. And generally our recommendation would be keep in mind the entire world and draft your claims that would be suitable for the entire world.
Yes, that's what we do in most of our applications. We only draft them once. They are good for all jurisdictions. Yes.
I am Ramanujan from Lakshmi Kumar and Sridharan, Director IPR. Now, if you look at the Indian side of the story, we have this 3K section, right? The terminology is computer programs per se. So would you be able to help decoding the per se attachment to this computer program?
For India cases,
Yes.
are you talking?
Why is it simply not saying computer program, but saying computer program per se? That looks to be rather confusing there. The computer program is a computer program in a technical form.
No, I'm not clear what your question is. Is it for Indian jurisdiction,
Yeah,
or you're
Indian-
asking about
Indian
computer per se? Or?
Indian jurisdiction, the section 3K has the wording computer program per se. So how do you interpret that per se being added to that word?
I would let Pradeep, because I'm more a US. Pradeep is our India expert.
It's not per se is not defined in India. Even there is a lot of discussion going on what belongs to per se. There is no answer, sir, currently.
Would that,
Even I spoke to controllers and there is no answer for per se. They are just treating as a computer program. Per se is not defined.
okay. Was that?
Yeah, I thought there should be somewhere somebody giving explanation, but it still remains the same. Right, the questions have been coming up in many forms, why the per se was adding on, and the word technical transformations are going left and right.
I guess it must have come from either US, maybe
So you are aware of this terminology in the...
per se.
But
Yeah.
the word, does it come in the EU?
I would like to make a comment on that.
We've heard that before. It's just, yeah, it's more in Indian.
May I make a comment on these questions? From the European perspective, I've been the former chairman of the Board of Appeal developing the software case law in Europe. Now, first of all, you're right that in the European, according to the European jurisprudence, technical character is required. However, this is for a method, for a business method, for instance, this is fulfilled, this requirement is met if it's tied to a computer. So the requirement is not so different from the United States. If a business method is computer implemented, it becomes patent eligible. It may not be patented at the second hurdle. The second hurdle is inventive step. And there we only take into account technical innovations. Now, when if the business method consists in a bright financial idea or a business idea, and implementation is more or less straightforward, then it would not be patentable or would not be patented because it does not overcome the inventive step hurdle. Whereas if the implementation might be innovative, then it may be patented. There are some business method patents in Europe. Secondly, there is very much concern about the term technical. or technological, it's synonymous. We have to live with words. We have to construe the law as it is, and the law consists of words. If you look at other terms, is it clear what a business method is? What is an abstract idea? When does an abstract idea become no longer an abstract idea? That's, for instance, a difficult question in the United States at the moment. And with respect to the computer program per se, the same requirement is in the European Patent Convention, computer program as such. And there has been a long discussion in Europe what it means. That's true. It's very, very difficult to understand. It's now understood that a computer program is not a computer program as such if it becomes a technical means. And it is a technical means if it produces a further technical effect, going beyond this trivial effect that bit patterns are transformed in different bit patterns when the program is loaded and run on a computer. So typically the further technical effect might be changing or modifying the internal functioning of a computer. For instance, operating systems are patentable, or embedded software was one of your examples given. So that's, we have to draw the line somewhere in the software field. And in Europe it's drawn this way, that we say, as such, is only software which does not produce or has no relationship to any technical effect.
Yeah.
That's all what I can say.
No, thank you for clarifying. I just want to, mention one scenario we have for one client. We have 10 patents. They're all granted in US. Most of them are business methods, but all 10 are rejected in Europe. But interestingly, they are all with the same examiner in Europe. But I did some research to see whether EPO has granted something similar. And I found cases where they have granted, there was similarities between those inventions. So it's possible, yeah, every examiner looks at it differently. That variation exists all over the world, from examiner to examiner. There shouldn't be, yes. But we do see, in this case, the examiner, we have appealed it, and it has costed a lot of money to the client, and they have rejected. And we find appealing in Europe also harder, basically because of the costs and also just the nature of the appeal. This is basically what the European associates advises constantly. So all I'm saying is, I'm not pointing at, it's just that when it comes to software, there's a lot of strategy that's required in choosing jurisdictions and then choosing types of inventions, how you claim, how you write, how you do things. Because it's just evolving, I think. But thank you for clarifying. We would probably like to have more discussion with you on that. Thank you.
I just wanted to make one